All right, let's learn how to do unit testing. All right, unit testing is a technique that you will have to do at your job. If you work at like a bigger company, it's a requirement that you do unit testing. At like mid-sized to lower level companies, it's just generally a good idea to do it, but they may not require you to do it. It's essentially a way of testing whether or not your code works as expected. Now you probably are thinking that we've been doing that manually, right? You just run your code and does it work the way you expect? The problem with manual testing is number one, humans make mistakes and they forget to test things thoroughly, and number two, it's tiring. I would hate to have to go through a huge program and do a bunch of stuff all manually. I would rather the computer just do it and automate it. So that's what Jest does. Jest allows us to automate testing, right? At the end of the day, the tests, the quality and whether or not they are useful will be how well you can craft them, and that's more or less, take some experience. Okay, but we're going to go over the basics of how to set up Jest and do all that good stuff. All right, so here we are. I am in my folder. I'm going to go to my Jest folder I made myself. All right, so we are first going to initialize a package. So do npm init 2 - yes. Okay. All right, now we'll create a package.json file, which is the configuration for our project. All right, and then we don't have to go through all of this stuff. The main thing I want you to do is here where it says scripts. Okay, I want to get rid of this and just put test. Right? Sorry, not test, Jest. Okay, what this will do is we'll see what this does actually later, but this will basically make it so that we can run Jest easily from the command line. All right, then we're going to run npm install Jest 2 save -dev. This save dev is not necessary. You could just install Jest normally, but we're just doing it for convenience sake. So I'll go ahead and do that. It'll take like maybe 30 seconds. It's not going to take a long time. All right, it's finished. So you'll notice it created a node modules folder, and this contains all the libraries I keep talking about. This is code that other people wrote that we get to use, so it helps make our lives easier. And we have our package.json that looks hunky-dory. All right, let's get to actually using Jest. So I'm going to make 2 files. I'm going to make an index.js, which will hold my program. All right, this is going to where my code lives. The second file I'm going to make is my testing file. So it'll be index.test.js. Now you'll notice that this is an orange JS, this is a yellow JS, so you'll notice that these are two different kinds of files. This will be the file where you put your code in, this will be the file where you put your test in. Okay, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. All right, let's actually see what I mean by testing, because you're probably still wondering, like, why is John talking about testing so much? All right, let's say we're making a calculator app. So we have functions that will do the 4 basic arithmetic operations. So let's work on the first function, which will be sum. So let's do function sum, and sum will take 2 parameters, okay, a and b. Okay, we're just going to say that they're going to add 2 numbers. All right, then we are going to return a plus b. Okay, so our function takes in 2 numbers. It will return the sum of those 2 numbers. All right, now, in order to test this, I need for the code or this function sum to be available outside of this index.js file, because the tests are going to live in this file, not this file. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a module. Okay, what module basically allows us to let other files know about our functions and objects and stuff in this on the outside world. Okay, it exposes our functionality to the outside world. Module dot exports equals sum. All right, so this file will take the function sum and export it. All right, what that means is I'll be able to use this function not in this file, and we'll see what that means in a second. So I'm going to do Control S. All right, I'm going to go to index.test.js, and I'm going to say let's say let sum equals require index. All right, what does this mean? Well, require is from Node.js, and require basically says, go and load this. Okay, I need this. I require some other file. Okay, it could be a library, it could be one of your own modules, right? But this module.export, okay, a module.exports, okay, allows us to do this. So now this function here is available in this file, okay, using the variable sum. All right, so actually let's make this const. Should be const because I don't want it to change. All right, so now we've got that. Now we're going to actually test our function. So the first keyword is test. Okay, don't let IntelliSense fool you. All right, test is a built-in Jest function that allows us to test our code. There's two main parts to it. The first is the description. What does this test for? Adding 2 and 2 make 4. Okay, so the way you think of tests is like basically what are you doing, what do you expect? All right, inputs and outputs. That's what functions are all about. You put something in, you get something out. So just like a calculator, when you put two numbers in, you expect the sum to come out. So if you put in 2 and 4, you expect the calculator to return 6. So if you still know what the return keyword is, or you're still like a little bit fuzzy on it, okay, like in functions we have return. Okay, you can think like you can visualize a calculator. Like you are inputting numbers. Once you hit equals, the calculator returns you a value. Okay, so that's what our function does. It takes in two numbers and it returns a value. In this case, I would like to test, the specific test case is adding 2 and 2 and making 4. All right, this part is up to you. Okay, you have to describe what your test does because other developers who are running the tests, and that is going to be a super common occurrence, need to know like what is this test, right? Like what the heck is this test? If you put something here that doesn't make any sense, it's going to lead to a lot of frustration among your coworkers. So put something here that makes sense. What are you testing, right? This function should work if I put two numbers in and get their sum. And I should not get a different number. So if I put 2 and 2, I should get 4. I shouldn't get 10. I shouldn't get 100. All right, the second thing we put in here, okay, the second parameter is we're going to do a function. I'm going to use an arrow function, okay, but the test function takes in a string and another function. All right, so we're doing a function. This function is going to be the actual test that we're going to run. All right, so follow along. Now we're going to do what's called arrange, act, assert. Okay, arrange, act, assert. Arrange is how do you set up your test. All right, sometimes your tests need to be setting, like you get to set them up a bit. You can think of it like doing a science experiment, right? Like you have to get the beakers and the chemicals and all the like measurement equipment ready, okay, before you can do the test. So there's a bit of setup that you need to do before you can do your experiment. That's what the arrange section is. Act is when you actually perform the experiment, when you mix the chemicals together to see what happens. And assert is your hypothesis. Okay, what do you think should happen? If I put 2 and 2 together, it should come out 4. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do the arrange part first. Okay, we're going to let sum is equal to, actually should use test sum, excuse me, equals sum 2 and 2. Now you're thinking, well, Jonathan, where is this coming from and why is this yellow? Well, remember, I did module.exports equals sum. This is the function. So I brought that function in on line 1 and put it in the variable sum. Now I get to use it. So I will say sum 2 and 2. So this is my arrange. So this is what I'm testing. There isn't really much of an arrange in this one. It's more like act, honestly speaking. But let's just get that out the way, make it simpler. All right, so I've got let test sum equals 2 and 2. So now I need to tell the computer what do I expect, right? Because you have an expectation. If I put 2 and 2 together, I expect it to be 4. So Jest gives us this expect keyword. It's a function. I expect test sum dot to be 4. Okay. The cool thing about Jest is that the assertions, this is called an assertion. Okay, the assertions are like, they read like a sentence, right? Like you expect test sum to be 4, which is like very easy to read and understand. So here's how this test works. I would like to add 2 and 2 using my sum function from index.js, which I exported here. Then I'm going to say, okay, cool, I'll say that in this test sum variable. Awesome. I expect test sum to be 4. Now, let's save everything, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, cool, you got your test, how do you run it? Easy. Go back to your command line, make sure you're in the right folder, npm test. Alright, so no tests found. Interesting. My bad, they were not in the right folder. Alright, I should have visually seen that. So, let's try that again. All right, cool. All right, so you'll notice that Jest will give you a result, right? It will basically run your tests and tell you what the result was. In my case, they passed. So adding 2 and 2 make 4. Notice how I did like this like test description shows up here. So that way the person knows this is test is the one that passed. And so in a real world case, you're going to have multiple tests. Okay, so but this is a very like simple example. So you'll be able to write your function, export it, okay, and then you're going to use the test function that comes from Jest. Describe the test. Then you're going to do a function. I usually use arrow function. There's nothing special about that. And then all you have to do is basically say, okay, cool, like run my function, and then assert what I think should happen. So I said test sum is 2 and 2. Expect test sum to be 4. Now, as far as the breakdown of this line, expect is a built-in Jest function. It takes in the thing you're testing, so usually a variable you're going to make. After this, it's called a matcher, and there's a bunch of them. All right, so we use to be 4 because I'm expecting it to be 4, but there's other ones. So if we go to like the Jest website and look at the documentation, you can see that there's a bunch of other ones, like to not be null, or to be null, or to be defined, or to be truthy. Okay, or to like for numbers, to be greater than, to be less than. With strings, we're going to learn about regex at a certain point, so you'll be able to use regex. You'll be able to use arrays, exceptions. Like there's all sorts of stuff you can test for besides just to be. All right, to be is easy. You can use to equal as well. All right, and there's a bunch of them, right? So it allows us to really be very, very flexible, okay, with our tests. But we'll do more with Jest, but this is just a very, very basic example of using Jest to check to see if your functionality is working. Now, you might be saying, Jonathan, this is easy, right? You're just adding 2 numbers. What if someone does this, right? Some intern comes in next week, and they fat finger this, right? So now, my test will fail, so I'll show you what that looks like. So if I run my test again, it failed. Okay, we'll say red and failed. And now I know that there is a problem. Okay, so this is basically a big red flag to other developers saying someone made a mistake somewhere. Our tests are failing. All right, let's go investigate and figure out why. And that's why the naming of the test is very important, because this lets me know the thing that's actually wrong. That's really the point of unit testing. It's not just like so that you know your stuff works. It's also to when someone makes a change and that breaks something or that makes the code not work anymore, there's a big flashing red light as to what is going wrong so that someone can go fix it. So someone will look at this and be like, holy crap, why did this fail? Joseph fat fingered that. So here we're going to put a plus here, save it, rerun the tests. And there we go, it passed and everything's hunky-dory. All right, that's kind of the point of doing these unit tests. It's kind of a way to gatekeep the quality of your code. Again, not foolproof, but it's really useful. All right, that is all for testing at the moment.